Okay, so when you think of where your clothes come from, Bangladesh is probably high on the list, right? They're an absolute giant in the garment industry. But there's a catch, a pretty big one actually, a hidden flaw in the very fabric of their success that could, well, unravel the whole thing. Let's dig into it.
Go ahead and take a look at the shirt you're wearing right now. Think about its journey from a cotton plant all the way to you. It's a long, complicated road. And if that tag says made in Bangladesh, a really crucial part of that journey is surprisingly weak. So, what's this hidden flaw all about? And here is the central mystery, the big paradox of it all. Bangladesh is amazing, a true powerhouse, at the final step, sewing and assembling clothes. But, and this is a huge but, they're not so great at making the actual fabric those clothes are made from. It's kind of like being a world-class chef who has to import all their main ingredients. To really get why this is such a massive deal, we've got to wrap our heads around a term you might not have heard before. It's called backward linkage. It sounds a bit technical, I know, but trust me, it's the secret sauce to building a super strong, self-reliant industry.
Basically, backward linkage is just a fancy way of saying a country can make all the ingredients for its final product, right there at home. For clothes, that means the whole shebang. Growing the cotton, spinning it into yarn, weaving the fabric, and even making the buttons and zippers. It's all done in-house.
So let's just quickly walk through the steps so we're all on the same page. You start with raw cotton, right? That gets spun into yarn. Then the yarn is woven into what's called gray fabric, which is basically just plain undyed cloth. Finally, that gets dyed, printed, and finished. The goal, the dream for any country, is to do all of this smoothly, without having to wait for shipment from halfway around the world. Okay, so that's the ideal scenario. Now for the reality check. Where exactly are the weak links in Bangladesh's chain? Let's dive in and see where the problems really are. This here is going to be our guide for the next few minutes. We're breaking the supply chain down into 5 key pieces: the raw cotton, the spinning mills, weaving, knitting, and then all the accessories. And believe me, it's a real mixed bag. Some parts are struggling while others are actually thriving. So let's start at the very beginning. The first link, raw cotton. And yep, we hit a snag right out of the gate. This is where the whole issue really begins. So why the trouble with cotton? Well, it boils down to a couple of things. First, geography. Bangladesh is a pretty small country, and it just doesn't have endless fields to grow cotton. On top of that, the soil isn't exactly perfect for it. And then there's the money side. Farmers can actually make more profit growing other things. So what happens? They have to import nearly all of their raw cotton. Okay, so they import the cotton. The next step is turning it into yarn at the spinning mills. And this is another spot where things get tricky. Just look at this chart. When you compare Bangladesh to its big competitors, we're talking Vietnam, India, China, their spinning mills are about 10% less productive. Now, 10% might not sound like a lot, but in this global market, that's a huge disadvantage. It makes it really tough to compete on price and, just as importantly, on speed. All right, and this brings us to what might be the biggest weak link of all, the weaving mills. This is where you take the yarn and turn it into actual fabric. And honestly, this is the most critical bottleneck in the entire system. Get this, the fabric, just the fabric alone, makes up 75% of the total cost of a piece of clothing. 75%! So when a country has to import most of that fabric, well, you're essentially shipping the most valuable part of your business. And the profits, right out the door. But hey, it is not all bad news. Not at all. There are actually some real bright spots in this story. So let's switch gears and talk about the parts of the supply chain where Bangladesh is absolutely knocking it out of the park. The final stages, things like dyeing, printing, and finishing the fabric, have gotten so much better. Why? Because it takes less money to start one of these businesses, so you get more entrepreneurs jumping in. The one catch, though, is that you can have the best dyeing process in the world, but if the fabric you imported isn't great, the final product won't be either. Okay, now we get to a major success story. This is where Bangladesh's domestic supply chain really shines. I'm talking about trims and accessories. Look at this, an incredible 80%. That means 8 out of every 10 buttons, zippers, labels, all those little but crucial pieces are made right there in Bangladesh. That is a massive win and a perfect example of what strong backward linkage looks like. So, we've got our weak links and our strong links. But what does it all add up to? What's the real-world impact of all this?
In other words, why does this matter so much?
This chart right here says it all. Only about 5 to 8%, a tiny, tiny sliver of all the raw materials for the garment sector come from inside Bangladesh. That means the rest, the huge majority, has to be brought in from other countries. And here's what that means for the bottom line. A staggering 60 to 70% of the money you pay for a garment goes right back out of the country to pay for those imported materials. That's a massive amount of cash that isn't staying in Bangladesh to grow their own economy. And it's not just about the money, you know? It's also about time. When you have to wait for materials to be shipped in, it adds to your lead time. That's the total time from starting an order to getting it in a store. And in the world of fast fashion, where trends change in a blink, speed is everything. Delays can literally kill a deal. Okay, so we get the problem, but what's the fix? Let's take a look at the game plan for how to strengthen these weak links and build a more resilient chain. It really comes down to a 3-step strategy. Step 1, figure out how to cut production costs, especially in those weak areas we talked about. Step 2, get smart about sourcing raw materials. And step 3, and this is the big one, pour investment into the spinning and weaving sectors. You have to fix the core of the problem. And that really leaves us with the final crucial question. In a world that wants new styles like yesterday, can Bangladesh afford the time and the money it takes to fix its supply chain? The clock is ticking, and for an industry built on speed, waiting might be the one thing they can't afford to do.